My mother had been away from her house for only a few weeks. She was staying with family while recovering from a difficult move. The house was empty, but it was still legally hers. Then the HOA decided an empty house meant nobody would fight back. I heard engines before I saw them. Then nearly 30 HOA guards filled my mother's street. They weren't there to inspect the property. They had come prepared to take control of it. Linda Brooks, the HOA president, was standing at the front of the group. She pointed toward my mother's house and gave the guards an order. She claimed the HOA had authority over property. I asked her one simple question. Where's my mother's permission? They ignored my warning and moved through the gate. I immediately called my mother and told her what was happening. She was terrified when she heard how many people were there. Then she told me something that changed everything. Mom reminded me that she had the original deed safely stored. The property wasn't HOA owned, and it wasn't abandoned. Every document proved that the house belonged to her. The HOA wasn't protecting property. They were trespassing. I made one phone call and gave them the address. I explained exactly what was happening at my mother's property. The person on the other end already knew who I was. He told me, "Stay where you are. We're coming." The first federal vehicles turned onto the street minutes later. The HOA guards stopped moving when they saw the uniforms. Linda's confidence disappeared almost instantly. She finally realized this was an argument she could win with intimidation. Within minutes, the entire street was surrounded. Federal vehicles blocked both ends of the neighborhood. The HOA guards suddenly had nowhere to go. And for the first time that afternoon, everyone was listening to the law. Linda shouted that the HOA was not giving up the property. I looked at her and said, "You're not taking it." She argued that the HOA had its own rules. The marshal simply asked her to show the document, giving her permission. The senior marshal stepped between us and asked for the HOA's legal authority. Linda opened her folder and suddenly stopped talking. She had plenty of rules, threats, and paperwork, but she didn't have the one thing that mattered: a legal right to take my mother's house. The marshal asked Linda to produce the deed immediately. She flipped through her folders, searching for an answer. But every page she showed him was an HOA rule, not ownership proof. Then the marshal calmly told her, "Rules don't replace property rights." Linda's confidence disappeared almost instantly. She started arguing that the HOA had been managing the neighborhood for years. The marshal didn't care how long they had been doing it. He wanted to know why they were inside a private home without permission. One by one, the guards were ordered back outside. Their entire operation collapsed within minutes. The people who had arrived expecting control were now being escorted away. My mother's empty house suddenly had more legal protection than the entire HOA. Mom finally returned to her house that afternoon. She stood at the front door and took a long breath. She had been afraid someone would take away the place she built her life around. Instead, she walked inside knowing it was still hers. The marshal examined every document Linda had brought. He compared their HOA rules against the actual property records. The difference was obvious. The HOA had authority over community regulations, not ownership of my mother's private home. Then the official records confirmed exactly what Mom had told me. Her name was clearly listed as the legal owner. There was no transfer, no sale, and no authorization for the HOA to enter. Linda had built her entire operation on an assumption that wasn't true. Linda finally realized the situation had become serious. Her guards couldn't protect her from the consequences of her own decisions. The marshal told her the investigation would continue. For once, she had no argument left. The convoy of HOA guards finally began leaving. The same people who had arrived with confidence now avoided eye contact. Linda left with her folders still clutched against her chest. But she knew the fight wasn't over. Mom walked through every room to make sure everything was safe. Then she returned to the front door and locked it herself. That simple sound meant more than I could explain. Her home was finally hers again. The HOA came with 30 guards, believing they could take control. Instead, they left with an investigation waiting for them. My mother never asked for special treatment. She only wanted her property respected.